Hello and welcome to this audio in which I have a look at the differences between used to and would. In the Facebook post you'll see that I've linked 3 different resources which explain the differences between used to and would. And if I can summarise what they basically say in just a few words, I'll say this. Used to is used in spoken language. Would is used more in written language. Would is more formal than used to, but that's not to say that used to isn't formal. Used to is formal. It's just that would is more formal than used to. We know from reading that used to and would can be used to describe repeated actions in the past. So if you did something several times in the past, you can use used to and would without any problems. So what are the real differences between used to and would? Well, used to is used to describe states and would is not. So what does states mean? States means basically something as it was at a particular point in the past. So not something as it is now, but something as it was in the past at a particular time. So maybe how your hair looked, or maybe what a building was used for. So the function or of what something did or what something looked like at a particular point in the past. This is what we know as a state, and we can only use used to describe that state. So this building used to be used as a warehouse. This building used to be McDonald's. It's not anymore, but in the past it used to be. So states are particular things that happened at particular points in the time, in the past. And these could be, as I said, absolutely anything. Would, on the other hand, is more used when we're describing a story, something that happened in the past. This is what I'll refer to as a storytelling narrative. So if anything sounds like it might be a story for whatever reason, whether you're explaining to someone else what happened in the past, or whether you're talking to, I don't know, your kids or your parents or whoever, you're describing a story of some kind, we would use would in that way. But as I said, it's more used in written language, not so much in spoken language. But of course, if we are using that storytelling narrative, then would is a better fit. We can, of course, say used to as well when we're telling a story. It's just that would sounds a little bit nicer, and it perhaps paints a slightly different picture in the listener or the reader's head. Used to and would, they mean exactly the same thing. So those are the basic differences. Used to is used in spoken language, would is used in written language. Used to and would both are used to describe repeated actions in the past. Used to describes states, things as they were at a particular point in the past, and would is used for telling a story, this storytelling narrative. With that being said, let's go through the questions that I asked you to have a look at. Of course, you could check to see if your answer was correct or not, but I'm going to use my summary of differences to go through each of the questions to hopefully explain why the answers are the answers in case you had any questions. So for question number 1, it is, I have short hair when I was a teenager. So you're talking about I guess from the context, a particular point in the past when you were a teenager. So I don't think we're getting at repeated actions here. We're getting at a particular phase or a particular time when you were a teenager. So this is seen as one time, not repeated times. So here the answer is, I used to have short hair when I was a teenager. Question number 2 is, we go to the same little cafe for lunch every day when I was a student. Here, very much this is a storytelling narrative, so we would go to the same little cafe for lunch fits here perfectly, but of course you could say we used to go to the same little cafe every lunch, and it would be okay as well. For question number 3, this definitely is not a repeated action, and this definitely is not a story. What you're doing is you're describing an event as it happened. And that is, she used to love playing badminton before she hurt her shoulder. So there's no way that we could use would here. For question number 4, he walk along the beach every evening before bed. This very much is a storytelling narrative. You're telling someone perhaps about what someone's habits in the past in perhaps a slightly more storytelling way. So would definitely work here. Of course, you could say he used to walk along the beach every evening before bed as well. Absolutely fine. No problems at all. But here this lends itself more to would. Question number 5. I always lose when I played chess with my father. Here a keyword is always, because it's unusual to say I used to always lose when I played chess with my father. You could say I always used to lose when I played chess with my father, which would mean that after a certain period of time you started to beat your father. So if that slash was after always, then we could say I always used to lose when I played chess with my father. But because of the position of the slash now, this is a bit more of a storytelling narrative. So I would always lose when I played chess with my father. Question number 6. She be able to dance very well. And the key word here is be able. Be able talks about the ability to do something. So you're talking about that ability, given the context, as one time phrase. A bit like question number 1. I used to have short hair when I was a teenager. This wasn't one particular day or one particular minute. This was a period of time, but it was one period of time. And number 6 is exactly the same thing. In this one period of time, she had the ability to dance very well. So here, this is not a repeated action in the context of repeated periods of time. This is one period of time. So here we cannot use would. We would have to say she used to be able to dance very well. For question number 7, my grandfather drink a cup of coffee after dinner every night. Very much a storytelling narrative here. Of course, we could say my grandfather used to drink a cup of coffee after dinner every night. But here, because of the storytelling narrative, my grandfather would drink a cup of coffee fits a lot better. Luke not have a car. Now we've got a difficult situation here because we've got a negative here and we've got to think about what do we do with that negative. Of course, if we were going to use would, we would have to say Luke wouldn't have a car, which doesn't make any sense given that we've got no context at all. So because of this lack of context, we have to say use, but that means we have to introduce an auxiliary verb to use the negative. So we would have to say Luke didn't used to have a car. For question number 9, we live in Brazil. Very much factual statement here. We used to live in Brazil. There's no storytelling here, at least given the context that we have, which is very limited context. There's no storytelling here. This is just a fact as it is. We used to live in Brazil. For question number 10, my family often go to the countryside for the weekend when I was young. Very much a storytelling narrative here. My family would often go to the countryside for the weekend when I was young. Just 2 points to raise. If you read the 3 links that I gave you to explain the differences between used to and would, you might have some questions about 9 and 10. If you have a look at the, where is it now? I think it's the one-stop English explanation. It says here, point number 5, used to cannot be used to refer to specific restricted periods in the past. For example, it says, in September 1991, I used to live in Paris. This sentence is incorrect and the past simple should be used. If you have a look at question number 9, we live in Brazil. There's no specific time mentioned here, but nevertheless, some people might say we lived in Brazil and be happy as that. As a pure statement of fact, we lived in Brazil is fine. We used to live in Brazil would need a little bit more context, in my opinion. And that context might be there. For example, if you were speaking, then the context would be clear. But written down on a piece of paper, just as this is, we live in Brazil, we used to live in Brazil, sounds a little bit strange. So remember that context is important when you're answering or when you're using this language in either spoken language or in written language. For question number 10, there's a key word here which is used, and that is often. Once again, if you go to the explanation from One Stop English, point number 4, it refers to how you could use often to refer to repeated states. So I just wanted to flag that as something which is interesting, and if you weren't aware of it, then it's well worth reading point number 4 from One Stop English, and how often can be used with would to refer to states in particular circumstances. Thank you very much for listening along, and remember to come back and visit my Facebook page on a regular basis. I'll try to post new material every single day, and of course, if you're doing the FCE or CE exam and you're using one of the gold books, Gold First, Gold Advanced, one of the expert books, First Expert or Advanced Expert, or if you're using the Ready for First series or the Ready for series, Ready for First, Ready for Advanced, then please go along to my website cramtheexam.com and sign up, and you'll be able to study those books online.